delighted to be here to talk about something very near and dear to my heart, which is how can we all be happier, thrive, flourish, feel more connected to others. A lot of this talk is going to be about connection. And I am an experimental social psychologist. My PhD is in experimental social psychology, and I started doing research on happiness 35 years ago. And my name, actually, Lyubomirsky, I'm an immigrant from the Soviet Union. It means love and peace. So I've always never liked my name. No one can pronounce it or spell it. You did a decent job, Dave. But it's memorable, and I guess it's kind of appropriate for happiness. So let me start by defining happiness. It's always a good idea. So I define happiness the way that researchers define happiness, which is that happiness has two components. So the first component is basically happy people frequently experience positive emotions like pride, joy, serenity, enthusiasm, calm, curiosity, affection, interest. Not all the time, but much of the time. But that's not enough. The second component to happiness is having a sense that you are satisfied with the way you're progressing towards your life goals, having a sense that your life is good. And I like to think about these two components of happiness as being happy in your life and being happy with your life. And it turns out that people who are happy in their lives and with their lives are not just happy, but they tend to accrue a lot of good things. So happiness, the pursuit of happiness is not just about pleasure. It's not just about feeling good. It turns out that when you're happier, you're more successful in life. So hundreds of studies, actually, there are really hundreds and hundreds of studies now that are showing that, that happy people who have experienced positive emotions, are, for example, more productive at work. They're more creative. They actually are wiser. There's this old childhood parlor game where you were supposed to decide whether you want to be happy or you want to be smart, right? And the implication was that you couldn't be both, right? And that turns out to be a false dichotomy. Happier people actually are more productive and creative. Happier people make more money. By the way, we can talk later about the relationship between happiness and money. And they have better jobs, and happier people make better leaders and negotiators. By the way, these are all correlations, and the causal direction goes sort of both ways. So for example, having money makes people happy, but happier people actually are sort of better, more successful at getting money. Happier people also have stronger relationships. They're more likely to get married, less likely to divorce. So here's some sample studies that many are longitudinal, correlational, some are experimental. So for example, getting back to income and money, so if you're happier, one study showed that students who were happier in college at age 19 went on to earn higher incomes at age 37. Okay, so many years later, and this was after controlling for parental income. So it wasn't just that they were happier because they were coming from lots of connections. In terms of marriage, a study showed that women who looked happier in their college yearbook photos, taken at age 21, so you might want to go back to your college yearbook photos. Women who looked happier, this is a study that was done at Mills College that has actually now been renamed. It's a women's college in Oakland, California. Women who looked happier in their college yearbook photos at age 21 were more likely to be married by age 27 and had more fulfilling marriages at age 52, right? Pretty incredible, right? Your sort of how happy you look in your photo, how happy you are in college predicts how good a marriage you have 30 years later. Happier people have stronger social support networks, have more friends, and they're healthier. They have strong immune systems. Happier people live longer, and also happier people are more resilient, better able to bounce back from stress and trauma and adversity. I didn't mention, you probably know this, companies with happier employees are more profitable. And I think what I'm going to talk about today is going to be relevant to your values, people first especially. So the question that really has been guiding my work for the last about 25 years is, how can people become happier? Hopefully this is a question that you guys are all interested in. And so what I've been doing in my research is exploring different kinds of sort of strategies that people can use to become happier. So, okay, so there are hundreds of practices that people can use to become happier. So practicing acts of kindness, savoring good things in your life, physical exercise, having a conversation with a friend, with your barista, practicing forgiveness, meditation, practicing spirituality and religion if you are so inclined. I assume that none of you are bowled over by seeing this list, right? This is not news to anyone, that these are all things that can make people happy. So the contribution that I and my amazing grad students like Tanya, what we do is that we are experimentally testing whether these strategies actually work and actually make people happier. So these are sort of practices that we kind of know from our grandmother, just from living life. I sometimes get emails saying, everything you study is in the Bible. And I think that's true because this kind of wisdom, like forgiveness and gratitude. Anyway, what we do is we actually do what we call happiness interventions. So happiness interventions are basically clinical trials. Actually, they are technically clinical trials. And ever since COVID, everyone knows what a clinical trial is. But instead of, say, testing a new vaccine or a medication, we're testing a happiness strategy like gratitude. A clinical trial for a vaccine might be asking questions like, is this vaccine effective or efficacious? By the way, fun difference between efficacy and effectiveness. So we can talk about that later. What's the optimal dosage of this vaccine? Should some people not take this vaccine? Should it not be combined with other kinds of medications? Well, we're asking very similar questions in our studies, except we're asking those questions about happiness practices. So what's the optimal dosage of gratitude? Should some people maybe not try to practice gratitude? It might backfire. So basically we randomly assign some people in our studies to practice gratitude, and then we also always have various control or comparison groups, and then we measure happiness and other kinds of things we measure over time to see if those strategies work. Okay, so these are examples of the different kinds of happiness interventions that we have conducted. So we'll ask people, pretend to live your life like it's your last month in the city where you live, or affirm your important values, or act more extroverted, talk with a stranger. And I'm going to talk about not all of them. I'm going to spare you the details. We've done dozens and dozens of happiness interventions. So my lab mostly has focused on really three strategies. So first, we ask questions like, how and why does expressing gratitude make people happier? We ask questions like, how and why does practicing kindness make people happier? And how and why does acting more social make people happier? So 3 different kinds of interventions. So I'm going to go into a little more detail into this. And I should mention that for a long time, there's been pessimism about whether it's even possible to become happier. There's research from behavior genetics shows that happiness is influenced by genetics, and we all know this, right? And those of you who have more than one child know that some of your kids, right, probably are just happier than others, and you feel like you kind of raised them similarly. Of course, we don't really raise each of our children similarly. So we know it's partly genetically influenced. We know our life circumstances can influence our happiness, although not as much as we think they do. But still, a lot of our happiness is in our power to change, that we can build, sort of basically by changing the ways that we act and changing the ways that we think. So this is basically what I'm testing in my research, sort of how can we change our daily behaviors, ways of thinking to make us happier. Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples, kind of like just a flavor of what we do. And I like to start with this study it was actually the very first happiness intervention we've ever done. I actually believe this is the first happiness intervention anyone's ever done, but not the very first to publish. This was in 1998, so 26 years ago. We asked people to count their blessings, and you probably all know what that means. Basically, like keep a gratitude diary. So we had people actually either once a week, every Sunday night, or Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday nights, 3 times a week, we asked people to write down for what they're grateful for. And what we found was, kind of surprisingly, or at the time, surprisingly, we found that people who counted their blessings once a week became more grateful, became happier. By the way, this was a 6-week intervention, so they did this over the course of 6 weeks. But people who counted the blessings 3 times a week did not become happier or more grateful. So we thought maybe there's something about, maybe it was too much, right? That it became kind of a chore. People maybe had trouble thinking of what to be grateful for. Maybe it sort of loses its kind of meaning and freshness if you sort of practice gratitude too much. So this was an example where we found that maybe there is kind of an optimal dosage for gratitude, and that optimal dosage was once a week. Moving on, we've done sort of similar like gratitude interventions. This particular one I want to tell you about, we did in the workplace. We went to an engineering company in Tokyo, and we asked people to, the experimental group was randomly assigned to, at the end of each week for, again, 6 weeks, to write down 3 things that went well at work. So again, very simple. We could all do this in our lives. Every Friday, write down 3 things that went well at work that week. And then our control group was also sort of positive. We asked people to write down 3 tasks that they completed that week at work. And what we found was that people who wrote down 3 things that went well at work, basically kind of counting the blessings, what is good about their week, they became happier. But we also found that they reported that they felt more connected to their colleagues in the workplace. And this is a long time ago, before the era of smartphones. We had accelerometers embedded in the badges that these are mostly engineers that they brought to work with them. And so we found that people who were in this sort of 3 good things at work condition actually moved more, and they arrived at work with more energy. They literally were moving more, maybe sort of somehow gave them more energy to sort of feel more positive about their work. In other studies, we have asked people to write gratitude letters as a way to practice gratitude. Again, I think everyone here probably knows what a gratitude letter is, right? You write a letter maybe to your mom or to your mentor, a friend, about the ways that they've supported you. And we have lots of studies where people are randomly assigned to write gratitude letters, as opposed to the control condition. Often we ask people to sort of try to organize your time to write down kind of everything you did that week or that day, which is kind of neutral, but also a little bit positive. And so we found, for example, that we had 1,000 high school students write gratitude letters to their parents, to their coaches, their mentors, their teachers. And we found that those students who wrote gratitude letters actually ate more healthfully over the course of 4 months. They ate fewer junk food, less junk food, less fast food, more fruits and vegetables. And we also found that it inspired them to want to be a better person. And the idea is that when you're truly grateful for your mentor, for your teacher, for your parent, sort of going the extra mile for you, you want to prove yourself worthy of their efforts, right? You want to make them proud. And so these high school students reported that they wanted to be a better person, after expressing gratitude. And by the way, I've tried to do this with my kids. I have 4 kids. I've tried to do this with my kids where we've had, gratitude around the table. I don't know, maybe some of you have tried this. It works sometimes. Sometimes they're very resistant and they think it's really hokey. So I think we all have to find ways of expressing gratitude that feel right for us. That's actually one of the themes of my work. Okay, moving on, we've done quite a few studies where we ask people to do acts of kindness for others, sort of focusing on other people as opposed to yourself. And we basically have found that doing acts of kindness for other people as opposed to for yourself. What I mean by that is treating yourself, like doing something like kind of self-care, treating yourself to like a chocolate or a nap or a massage. That's often our comparison group. People who do acts of kindness for others are happier. We also find that people who do acts of kindness for others report having a greater sense of competence, right? You feel good and like efficacious, competent when you help others, when that kind act is actually helpful. They say that they have more meaning when they help others, and we've sort of heard about this today, about philanthropy and helping. We also have, in addition to asking people, do they have meaning? Did they feel competent? Did they feel happy? We collect their blood before and after kindness interventions. So here's an example where we've done a couple of interventions where we ask people either to do acts of kindness for others every week over the course of 4 weeks. So like 3 acts of kindness, say every Monday. Okay, I'll say that again. So for the next 4 weeks, do 3 acts of kindness every Monday that you don't normally do. And then the control group will be do 3 acts of kindness for yourself every Monday that you don't normally do. We find that people who do acts of kindness for others show changes in their RNA gene expression associated with a stronger immune profile. Basically, they show less pro-inflammatory gene expression, a little bit more antiviral gene expression. So isn't that pretty cool? So kind of acts of kindness somehow gets under the blood, under the skin, into the blood, under the skin. So then we wondered, why is it that acts of kindness are so powerful? Not only do they make people feel happier and more connected and have more meaning, but also have less pro-inflammatory gene expression. Well, we thought, well, maybe when you help others, usually you actually do this to a particular person or people. It makes you feel more connected to them, right? It's sort of acts of kindness forces you to kind of engage with others and connect with others. And so we started doing research where we just simply ask people to engage in more social interactions. So you don't have to be kind. There's a fine line, right? If you ask someone, how are you? That's a social interaction, but it's also an act of kindness maybe. So we did a study where we found the biggest effect sizes we've ever found in any of our research, where we simply asked people for a week to act more extroverted. We didn't actually use that word because it has connotations, to act more sociable, energetic, or to act more introverted. And we found that both introverts and extroverts got hugely happier during the week where they acted more extroverted. I can talk about why this also worked for introversion later. But we asked people, we enabled people to define how they wanted to act more extroverted. It doesn't mean you had to be the life of the party. You could just sort of, I don't know, say an extra thing at lunch, sort of talk a little bit more. We also find that acting more social makes people more connected, especially when it's done in person. Now, it turns out that digital interactions, especially when they're synchronous and involve voice, so phone, video chat, are connecting. They do foster a sense of feeling in sync or having a sense of mutual trust and warmth, but not as connecting as in person. And we have a whole line of research on sort of how smartphone use and screen time affects well-being, especially well-being of kids and teens. So happy to talk about that later. So after all of this, I would say 3 decades of research, I have landed on what sounds like a cliche, which is that other people really matter, that if you want to be happier and thrive and have more success, that you would do well to sort of focus on other people, on supporting them, on recognizing ways that they've supported you, and simply interacting with them. So I'm actually right now writing a book on how to promote social connection, because it turns out that the key to happiness is connection. So basically what we're all doing here in the summit, interacting, engaging, talking to each other. So I'm writing this book called How to Feel Loved with a colleague from University of Rochester named Harry Reis, R-E-I-S. And I'm going to give you just a really quick appetizer to what we're writing about. And this is sort of 3 mindsets that we're writing about that you'll want to embrace if you want to feel more loved and make other people in your life feel more loved and to feel more connected. And I feel like just spending last night with you guys, this morning, I don't think I need to tell this group about these mindsets, but I'll tell you anyway, because I think you're already embracing them. Okay, the first one is called the sharing mindset. So the idea is that don't do what everyone does, which is that when they're, say, meeting, especially when they're meeting a new person or they're reconnecting, they tend to kind of show off, right? You want to make a good impression, so you talk about, you sort of want to show that you're a kind person, that you're smart, that you're successful, that you're funny. And those things do impress, but they don't forge a connection. And to forge a connection, you really want to show more of your sort of full self, to be vulnerable, right? You don't have to reveal your deepest secrets. But sort of sharing more of your full self is what actually makes a connection when you're actually sharing something vulnerable. Now, what about the other person is telling their story? What do you do? So you probably won't be surprised to learn. The research shows that most of us listen to respond instead of listen to learn. So next time you're in a conversation, listen like you're going to be quizzed on what the other person is saying. And this actually is done in listening workshops where you literally have to repeat what the other person has told you. And then finally, listening is not enough. You could learn all the different behaviors and enact them and be a good listener. You really need to show genuine curiosity and interest in the other person. Remember the last time you were at a party or social event, or maybe here, and another person was so excited to hear your story, right? Their eyes were just bright and shining. They just couldn't wait for you to talk. It's so compelling, right? So in your next conversation, try to sort of authentically share, listen to learn, and show genuine curiosity. Thank you.